Well, we are joined now from D.C. by American Enterprise Institute resident scholar Vincent Reinhart. Reinhart, as you know, is the former director of monetary affairs at the Fed and also the former FOMC deputy director. And Vincent, you know, when you've got now all of this public pressure on the Fed, you've got hackers now asking for Bernanke to resign, you've got to wonder what has happened to the message at the Fed.
So let me first say, Betty, reassure everybody, my criticism of the Fed is not anonymous. The Fed's got...
No, you were very out in front, Vincent.
Right. Multiple problems. It's a poorly performing economy. An unemployment rate at around 9% doesn't make anyone happy. Its policy of quantitative easing is hard to understand and is associated with some risks. Among those risks are the effects of rising oil and gas prices and other commodity prices, which further takes a dent out of income. And we have an election coming up. So here in Washington, politicians are going to get increasingly nervous. So they understand the voters are angry. They want to channel the anger. They just don't know quite how to do it. But they know they're angry at the Fed.
Right, they're angry at the Fed, and they blame the Fed for not helping the economy recover enough. And yesterday, Vincent, we had David Rosenberg on, who said, look, I'm 99% sure that by the end of next year, we are going to be in another recession. Would you blame the Fed if we did, in fact, fall into another recession?
Not particularly. The Fed has acted aggressively. QE2 left a lot to be desired, but they were at least going in the right direction. Here's the point. After a severe financial crisis, economies tend to grow more slowly for a persistent period. We found a paper with my wife for the Jackson Hole Fed Symposium that economies grow something like 1.5 points slower every year for the decade after the crisis, before the crisis. What that means is you're flying the plane slower and closer to the ground, and you're more vulnerable to adverse shocks. We're vulnerable. We're less resilient. Okay,
so what does that mean then for us? We seem to be at this inflection point, Vincent. What does that mean?
I don't actually think we're in an inflection point. I think we're in a period of muddling through, where we get growth one side or the other of the economy's potential to produce. That really doesn't make much progress on the unemployment rate because QE2 put an impetus to dollar depreciation and increases in energy and other commodity prices. We don't get inflation falling. So basically, everything moves sideways. The Fed can't embark on QE2.
But Vincent, isn't that a very long inflection point then? I mean, at some point we either go up or we go back down.
Well, sideways is always works as well. Yeah, we're vulnerable to risk. There's no question about that. If you're growing more slowly, then you're just less resilient. But I wouldn't rule out a couple of years in which the unemployment rate stays persistently high, inflation moves about sideways to gradually up, and there's a sense that policymakers just can't cope with it, and that we're going to have to accept it. That'd be unfortunate, no question about it.
So then at the Fed, if that was the thinking, and we don't know, of course, what exactly the thinking is among all the Fed officials, but if that was the thinking then, what would the Fed need to do, or what needs to be done then? I mean, is there serious thought about another stimulus?
So what's critical is their assessment of QE2, because you don't do QE3 if you think QE2 didn't work. They probably think QE2 worked modestly well, in part because they got the impetus early. It was a classic buy on the rumor, sell on the fact. They got the big rally before they started. So on net, they probably view QE2 as a slight encouragement to risk-taking and was associated on net with rising equity prices. Here's the problem. If we move sideways, that doesn't really give them a lot of push to do QE3. So either the economy has to deliver some really bad surprises, or we go for several more quarters with a poorly performing economy, and that finally gets them to try QE3.
Vincent, speaking about maybe bad surprises, we don't know yet, but we're going to get economic data at 8:30, right? It's going to be PPI and retail sales. I think we're really more concerned about retail sales, right?
Right. Well, I think we should be concerned about both because, look, QE2 is to give a little impetus to inflation. We're probably seeing core inflation a little bit higher. That stays the hand of the Fed to do more accommodation because the hawks on the FOMC are going to point to a core inflation at their goal and say there's no reason to do any more. Retail sales we're worried about because this is importantly the feed through the disruptions in activity in Japan. It's also a good reading on confidence.
It is, indeed. Vincent, thank you.